Okay, we're carrying on with the questions that were asked on the wake of the first interview with Rick on Buddha the Gaspar. And here's the question which directly relates to the Kundalini phenomena from someone who is undergoing that right at this very moment. I would like to hear on the progression of Kundalini, do the inner sounds mean anything in particular, as in various chakras, opening, spirit calling, etc. And the void, that emptiness beyond anything, feels as if my very soul is being ripped from my body. No desires, no wants, no pleasure, no bliss, no anything but this emptiness. I am experiencing this now, nothing, just nothing, not as in that beautiful emptiness of being. Yes, it is very common experience when the initial burst of consciousness, burst of that latent energy takes place. It creates temporary disconnection from the existing network of gut-brain reaction. What happens is that the wiring, the cognitive processes undergo a tremendous transformation. But before even the transformation takes place, because that's the next stage, because when we examine Kundalini phenomena, there are distinctive stages involved. And of course, everyone will experience awakening and the consequent of rise of Shakti in accord to the degree with which that awakening itself was triggered. And traditionally there are 5, classically speaking, it's very little known subject, 5 different ways how Kundalini could awaken and how it would indeed render the individual, all to do with latent tendencies or desires which were culminative in that whole process, so that it will color the process, as it were. But it is entirely different subject, and we'll concentrate here on the question itself. So in the case of the awakening, there is this very powerful stir that takes place. And the existing connection between the spontaneous reactions that take place on the physiological level, the cognitive responses, are often being unplugged, often being dissociated. And that gives one the impression of being completely ungrounded, dizzy, often that accompanied by the experience of being blissed out, but in case of this questioner, there is no bliss as far as I understood, that just this emptiness, And let's not make mistake. This is not the emptiness of, let's say, what Buddhists talk about. This is not the emptiness of shunyata. This is not the emptiness of that state of void that is experienced in some of the progressive stages of meditation and self-inquiry. It is a very different kind of emptiness. And I like that sentence here that I want to read again, is that it feels as if the very soul is being ripped from my body. And that's exactly what's happening. It's the soul which Kundalini embodies and personifies, is in its upsurge, and at times, at that initial impact of awakening, And soon after, it feels as if it's eager to leave the body. It's as if it's eager to dislodge from all these coverings. And that could coincide with very elated but very ungrounded states. And it also could coincide with tremendous sense of disorientation and disconnection. So, going back to the first part of the question with regard to the inner sounds and all these phenomena that often accompanies Kundalini awakening, even the stir of Kundalini, the consequence of Kundalini being moving along the spine, through the respective energetic centers, through the respective energy vortexes. And I don't know if you have noticed that often, very often in all these exchanges and all these reflections, I try to avoid the word chakras. It seems to me that the word chakra has been so overused in modern vocabulary, in the vocabulary of New Age, that it is utterly confusing, because people, when they talk about chakras, they think of something else, that people who have never experienced Kundalini, they talk about chakra opening, like, oh, I went to this course, I had completely my heart chakra opened. Or, I had this experience, my throat chakra opened. And I'd like to make this little kind of detour into the spiritual anatomy, so that we have a better understanding of what chakras are and what their functioning and what their roles and how it is all connected to the physical body and to the rest of the sort of this complex network of manifestation of the spirit and throughout its various levels of creation. Chakras are vortexes of energy, and in fact, although they keep in check all the functioning of the physiological body, and indeed are directly connected through subtle pathways with the hormone production, because each chakra is corresponsively sort of related and situated in the body, where then the body expresses itself through the endocrine system and the production of hormones necessarily for proper functioning of this individual. However, the chakras rotating at their own speed, obviously, speed and the velocity, which is reflected to their respective positioning and their association with certain elements, with certain color emission, and yet, to experience chakra properly is only possible when Prana Shakti enters the medium channel, the middle channel, which is called Sushumna, and start its ascent by piercing through the energy vortexes. And that what reactivates the chakras and allows the chakras to release the information which is inherently stored within those vortexes. So it's like each chakra is the energy vortex of energy which contains psychic information which has been stored there for millennia, maybe for millions of years, because that's, for each chakra we are related to the realm of a particular element. Like in case of the earth chakra, that connects us through its magnetic force, it connects us through the whole entire planet and to all entire elementary world which expresses itself as the earth. Through the water chakra, the second chakra next to the earth chakra, and obviously as the element itself presupposes that connects us through all what is fluid, to all relations, to all the connectivity through that element. And yet, what is important to understand that on the level of astral anatomy, on the level of this astral structure, each chakra is the repository of psychic impressions. This is where all the stuff is sitting. This is where all the stuff is being stored. So in a human being in whom consciousness is dormant, the chakras are doing their roles, but they are at the same time reinforcing that connection to the physical body. And only through the process of the withdrawal of the prana from the respective centers, as it passes through, as it pierces through the chakras, that information is being processed. First of all, it's being reactivated, then processed, and then released. When that happens, it is often coincided with the psychic phenomena. So all this psychic experience that we have, which are triggered by the awakened consciousness, by the Shakti herself, are associated with the release of information in each respective energy vortex. So that's the essence of psychic experiences. And some people get arrested at a certain stage precisely because the experiences can become more fascinating than the destination of the journey. Because it's very easy for Kundalini get literally bewildered, because that association of who you are in essence and Kundalini is at that stage is not yet being fully cognized, is not yet being fully realized. Thence our fascination with a certain psychic phenomena, it's Kundalini's fascinations with certain psychic phenomena. And blessed are those who, or in whom, the power of the prana is capable of washing away all these, so to speak, conditions in the fashion whereby psychic phenomena may manifest or may not, but there is no arrest in the movement of prana. Prana carries on in its expansive movement. So traditions, various traditions, speak of different experiences associated with each particular psychic center. There is even a detailed description of each inner sound that the aspirant hears within that is kind of reflective of the transitory stage. The sound of the conch shell, the sound of the crickets, the drums, all these various different sounds that are being perceived within are supposed to be like signposts for the aspirant, or for someone who interprets those experiences for the aspirant, to basically remind him or her of the respective work that is taking place, or respective, let's say, vibration of Shakti at each particular region. There are cases, although, of course, when very little psychic phenomenon is experienced. These are cases of exceptionally purified beings in whom the psychic impressions are so, let's say, insignificant to the process that Kundalini could just travel up the Sushumna channel without any undue restriction, without any obstruction. It may encounter psychic experiences at a much more advanced level, and it usually does, the psychic experiences associated with the so-called Rudra Granthi, that on its way Kundalini encounters 3 knots. The Granthis are being interpreted from Sanskrit as literally knots where the network of subtle channels is so intense that they create a certain almost like knot-like situation. And they are respectively positioned in the following order. The Vishnu Granthi, the Brahma Granthi, which is the aspect of creation, is right down where Kundalini is supposed to reside, in Muladhara chakra. This is the awakening itself. Some yogic traditions and tantric traditions say that there is no awakening unless Brahma Granthi is being untied or cut altogether loose. Because no matter how much Kundalini can awaken, if that knot is not being untied, Kundalini has no power to leave Muladhara. It will stay in Muladhara, it may stay active with Muladhara, but there will be no progress, there will be no ascent. And the second knot is Vishnu Granthi, and that is on the level of the heart. This is where the so-called Anahata chakra, the vortex of energy associated with air element, and which is basically the abode of unconditional love. And this is the Vishnu Granthi, the preservation of the preserving aspect of consciousness is situated in the spiritual anatomy. So when Kundalini reaches that area, it requires a tremendous force to leave 3 previous chakras, 3 previous centers, and pierce that Vishnu Granthi. So when the Vishnu Granthi is pierced, then the last Granthi is the Rudra Granthi, or in other words, the knot of Shiva. And this often becomes a formidable place for many tantrics, yogics, yogis, alchemists, Taoists, what have you, Kabbalists, because every tradition speaks of that center, this like center of the command, the Ajna chakra, which is associated with the most important glands in the body, the pituitary and pineal gland, which are closely related, very situated within the proximity of each other, deep within the anatomy of our skull. So how much can we assess when we, let's say, analyze all these sounds and all this phenomena that is mentioned, let's say, in this question? It may help, of course, to someone to know, like, I'm experiencing this, let's say, sound of the crickets, very loud sound of the crickets, So what does it mean? Is my Shakti now is in that particular spot? Is it like left that spot? So my suggestion is that enjoy the ride, but don't place too much emphasis on what is this particular sound is, because the sound will become progressively more subtle until it reaches the heart region. In the heart region, because of the nature of Kundalini, the nature of Prana Shakti, will radically undergo transformation. It becomes gaseous at that level. So the sound becomes, like often the piercing of the Vishnu Granthi, the enter into the Anahata chakra, is accompanied by a profound sound of the flute. And indeed, it does sound as the flute. And I used to, when I was kind of like looked for some analogy, when I've experienced it myself many years ago, I was saying that the magic flute of Mozart, it pales in comparison. And I did work, on that part, with that particular opera. Like I said, I was fortunate enough to have a commission at some point where a certain, artwork had to be created. So I was listening it over and over, some of the very beautiful recordings of that opera. And it's just an analogy, it's just a comparison that the subtlety of the sound literally puts in perspective any most beautiful music that has been produced, or composed in any culture. And this is indeed experienced. And what's interesting is that when you experience that, you don't want any other sounds, you don't want any music around you, you don't want any sounds, no matter how beautiful. The most beautiful Gandharva music, Indian music that I used to be bathing in, it was literally playing in the background for years, I couldn't even hear that music because it simply did not match the subtlety of the sound of the flute of the open heart. And that sound doesn't stay too long. It actually subsides and prana carries on and the sound becomes even more progressively subtle. So I'd say that not to put too much emphasis on the sounds. And the other aspects mentioned here, the spirit calling and the void. Yes, there are many psychic experiences associated with visions, spirit callings, various divinities or various not so much, not so divine entities starting to, kind of like tempt us, communicate with us, and to the best of my knowledge, I'd say that all this has to be observed with the detached eye of a witness. That's the only prerequisite and a very important prerequisite for allowing the prana to carry on, to do its work in where it should. And just a little more on this experience of feeling this nothingness, this emptiness, and not as, like the last sentence, not as the beautiful emptiness of being. Yes, let us not confuse that emptiness is not here to stay. It's not a permanent experience, and it's not the final experience. It's just a stage. That emptiness is literally, going back to what I said at the very beginning, it's the process of rewiring. When new connections, very much subtler connections, would be made, because they will inevitably be made, because the human being cannot exist without that process of electrical wiring of the the cognitive processes being recognized and registered in the brain cortexes and then issued back through the appropriate hormonal production and the impulse that prompts us to certain action and certain reaction. They would be qualitatively altered. And then life will take another dimension, life will take another meaning. Everything that we've experienced prior to that, there will be a moment when everything would feel as if, like anew. A simple act of, let's say taking a morning shower will feel like, wow, it's just like, whoa, this is really, really amazing, You cut a slice of fruit and that would feel, you may just like sit and just have that relationship for a while with that slice of fruit. It's as if we're rediscovering the life, and that's a very beautiful moment, So I would not worry about this. It's not here to stay. It's a transitory stage, and we have to have enough courage and wisdom to go through it and to basically be up to the challenge.